Welcome. My name is Sean. Today I will be the captain of this vessel, and we will set sail on this wonderful journey where Anna Kasparian talks about how Democrats are losing on crime, and then shows us exactly why the left can't win on crime. This video is absolutely amazing. They start by talking about how the Democrats are wrong for denying crime, and then continue to deny it throughout the course of the video because they just can't help themselves. And we have to talk about it. But this video is in fact sponsored, so before we get into the video, we have to talk about the sponsors. So I'll toss it over to them, bring it back over here, and we'll discuss on the other side. Hey, did you know that silver dipped in price because a lot of people were panic selling it? Did you know that silver is crucial in all manner of production? And once pre-pandemic production levels resume, silver's price is expected to go through the roof? Well, now you do, and what you gotta do about it is go over to noblegoldinvestments.com right now, or call a specialist at 877-646-5347 and get invested in silver. This is the perfect time to start a silver IRA with Noble Gold. And if you start a qualifying IRA this month, you will be gifted an American Virtue 3-ounce silver coin with Jefferson's face on the front and a Liberty Lady on the back. It's absolutely amazing. It's beautiful. It's got some weight to it. Real money should have weight to it, and you need to get on board. That's noblegoldinvestments.com, 877-646-5347.
This seat is very important that they'll do anything to win this seat, lie, because they want to make it by everything else except what the true problems that we have in this country is. This inflation, the border wide open, crime.
Herschel Walker, following the big abortion scandal he was involved in, has decided to really lean into his anti-crime messaging. And that's really no surprise.
Now look, Herschel Walker undeniably is going through a bit of a scandal. We can all acknowledge that, and we can all acknowledge that that might ultimately end up costing him his Senate race in the state of Georgia. Luckily for Herschel Walker, somehow Raphael Warnock is going through a domestic violence situation where his wife has come forward to talk about the abuse that he puts them through. So somehow in Georgia, out of all the people within that great state, they've managed to nominate two people with issues with women, even though they're different issues with women, and that is the state of the Georgia Senate race. However, what he said in that moment is not wrong. The crime issue is a major issue, and the Democrats are looking for anything and everything to deflect from that issue. So while his scandal is legitimate, while people can have questions about it, while people can be concerned for his family, in reality, he is cutting to the core and focusing on a main winning issue identified right here on this channel as a winning strategy, and other Republicans are doing so as well, and that has led to successful polling numbers in the Pennsylvania Senate race, the New York gubernatorial race, where Lee Zeldin is closing ground on Kathy Hochul, running almost exclusively on the issue of crime, according to the Trafalgar poll. By the way, that same poll, and probably should be getting equal amount of attention, actually has the Republican running ahead of Attorney General Letitia James, who's even worse on crime than Kathy Hochul. And, of course, the Young Turks are not happy about it. And we talked about in the past how Anna Kasparian and Cenk finally figured out that crime was bad. They changed their position. They started talking about how these leftist criminal justice policies were a terrible idea. And I pointed out that one of the reasons why they're moving on that train is because this is so obviously a losing issue for the Democrats, for the left, that it's going to cost them what should be, in their minds, secured elections. Definite no chance of winning races are now competitive solely based on the crime issue. And by the way, Anna Kasparian knows this. She acknowledges this. This is why she's talking about this. Not because she's really changed her position on criminality, but because she knows it's going to cost them seats in the federal government and in local and state governments across this country.
And if you look at the political landscape right now and all of these various elections, you'll notice a repetition of the same anti-crime messaging from these Republican candidates. And I bring this up because we should be a little concerned. It seems to be working in some cases, especially when you look at the polls between Mehmet Oz and John Fetterman. Fetterman still has a lead, but Oz, even with all of these terrible stories coming out about him and how his company did terrible abusive testing on dogs, he's starting to close that lead that Fetterman has over him. And I think it's because he keeps repeating this crime messaging.
So interesting thing of note, by the way, which is Anna Kasparian calling Dr. Oz Mehmet Oz in order to invoke his less known first name, which emphasizes his Turkish origins, which, by the way, is a strategy to delegitimize this world-renowned cardiac specialist as not a legitimate doctor. It's one of the things that I've started to see among left-wingers. It's quite interesting how they will play up the fact that he is of Turkish origin or a Turkish family and all that when it's convenient for them, but they would call Republicans racist for doing the very same thing.
How do you feel about dual citizenship with other countries, especially being a civil servant, as you would be as a senator?
Thank you for asking the question. The reason this is coming up is because of my opponent making a big deal about the fact that I was born in this country, but my father and mother, as I mentioned, were Turkish immigrants. So by Turkish law, you're allowed to keep your Turkish citizenship, which I've kept for only one reason. My mom has Alzheimer's. Ben knows a lot about that ailment. It's a horrible disease. 6 million Americans are afflicted by it. My mom lives in Turkey with it. And you lose your loved ones twice. You lose them when they forget you, and then you lose them when you lose them. My one sister has mental health issues, and so I have a restraining order against her in Turkey. This is a lot of dirty underwear, but it's the reality, and I'm pretty transparent about who I am. So I maintain my Turkish citizenship so I have custodial control over her health care. And I would compromise that if I gave it up. However, I've agreed, because this is a distraction, that if I'm elected, if I'm honored to allowed to be serving you, that I will give up my Turkish citizenship before I would have served in the Senate. But I know I shouldn't have to, and to answer your question, there is no issue. There have been other senators who are dual citizens. Ted Cruz was a dual citizen. But I don't want there to be a distraction about this. I know I shouldn't have to, and I can love my mom and I can love my country at the same time. But this is politics, and this issue has come up, and I don't want it to be in the back of anyone's mind, well-meaning or not. And so I've already made that commitment. We've found ways with my family to address this.
Especially when Dr. Oz is much shorter to say than Mehmet Oz, and the Young Turks know full well, and they put in their title and their tags, Dr. Oz, when they want to generate views. She's calling him Mehmet in order to minimize him, even though it's his name, in order to not bring up the fact that he's a doctor, because they found out that doctors are quite trusted in the United States of America. So a little bit of gamesmanship in this video right there that you might not notice unless you're paying attention to politics as closely as I am, but just wanted to take note of that before we get through the rest of this video.
Now, the Republican National Committee has tweeted out a near daily update of crimes and crime statistics in the Philadelphia area. On Tuesday, it shared footage of a carjacking at a Philadelphia gas station and highlighted that there have been more than 1,000 carjackings in the city this year. So this is very much something that is supported by the Republican establishment, this pivot toward crime messaging.
So Anna brings up Philadelphia. She talks about how Republicans have been putting out videos of crime from Philadelphia each and every day, and it's clearly a coordinated strategy, and Anna is angry not about the substance of the issue, the fact that crime is outrageous in the city of Philadelphia, and we're going to talk about why later on, trust me, but she's mad that the Republicans are talking about it because this is an effective issue. Remember, Anna Kasparian talks about how everything is elite propaganda, and it's all meant to distract you from the issues that actually impact you, so then Republicans start talking about the issues that impact everyday citizens, crime and its impact on society, and now all of a sudden Anna doesn't want to talk about it because the left has basically created an environment that fosters this criminality.
And I want to focus on the Fetterman race a little bit and then go to you, Jordan. So in Pennsylvania, Republicans are seizing on high-profile incidents in the Philadelphia area, including the recent ransacking of a Wawa store at the shooting of 5 students outside a high school last month.
So again, if you don't remember this video of the Wawa ransacking, I will show you a clip of it right now. And for podcast listeners, I will describe to you the utter chaos that's going on.
Y'all all stupid. For real. Y'all all ugly, stupid, broke. gonna be a little.
Now, as you can see, you have a bunch of young black men, probably teenagers, coming into Wawa, and they don't even look like they're looting the place. They don't even look like they're stealing things. They actually look like they're just there to destroy the place. And one of the funniest parts about this video, and actually the hero of this video, is this one woman who's not having any of this crime and just came in for a sandwich, who criticizes the Wawa workers for videotaping everything that's going on instead of taking control over the situation.
It's gonna be a little.
But again, in the city of Philadelphia, crimes like carjacking, crimes like these kind of flash mob attacks on businesses are rarely ever prosecuted due to a left-wing district attorney, Larry Krasner. Larry Krasner is endorsed by John Fetterman. John Fetterman believes the same things as him, and John Fetterman is pro-criminal. So showing this in contrast to the guy that you're going up against is a great strategy for Dr. Oz, and it's one of the reasons why Dr. Oz is pulling ahead and will likely take the Pennsylvania Senate race. Also, Fetterman had some kind of a stroke and he can barely speak, so maybe that has some impact, although we learned from the last presidential election that not being able to speak does not hurt your electoral prospects in most circumstances.
And the shooting of 5 students outside a high school last month.
Now, I also want to point out that Anna just glosses over the fact that in Philadelphia, multiple shooters showed up outside of a high school football practice and started opening fire on the kids at the practice, wounding several of those kids. It really goes to show you, no matter what the left says, no matter how much they talk about gun violence or violence in schools or gun violence related to schools, if the issue involves black on black crime, they will immediately wash their hands of it and never discuss it. So she just brushes past it, not addressing the issue, but this is the same person who virtue signals about violence and gun violence in particular around our schools.
Democratic Senate nominee John Fetterman, the state's lieutenant governor, has been forced to play defense by, this is not good, erasing statements of support for Black Lives Matter from his website.
So Fetterman is pulling Black Lives Matter messaging off of his website because it is a loser messaging when there are giant crime spikes, and the city of Philadelphia, for example, is experiencing its highest amount of murders all time. And to be clear, the city of Philadelphia is not at its peak population. They are actually historically a declining population, but they are at the peak homicides in the city of Philadelphia all time, and John Fetterman has no answer for this. And of course, you can always play clip after clip of John Fetterman saying insane things about criminal justice when he was able to talk, like the fact that if he could wave a magic wand and do one thing, change one thing about American society, it would be to release murderers from prison.
If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and fix one thing, what would it be?
Life without parole in Pennsylvania. We could save billions in revenue long term. We could save thousands of lives and not make anyone less safe. And also expunges many permanent records of people that have been living their best lives and have been paying well beyond when they should have for a charge that they caught, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I was on a panel with Secretary Wetzel earlier before the pandemic hit, and he said something remarkable that I agree with. He said, we could reduce our prison population by a third and not make anyone less safe in Pennsylvania. And that's a profound statement.
By the way, that's not just John Fetterman waxing poetic. That's not just John Fetterman talking about a hypothetical in order to get woke virtue points. John Fetterman, as lieutenant governor, actually pushed for the release and commutation of multiple criminals, including killers like the Horton brothers. Now, Fetterman will claim that the Horton brothers are innocent. I actually did a whole entire video breaking down how not only did they participate in the felony murder, but one of the Horton brothers is in fact the shooter, and their story you cannot possibly believe unless you're a complete and utter idiot. 3 witnesses saw them. 1 witness outside the bar, which they were robbing in a group of 3, saw all 3 of them enter a vehicle. They were pulled over minutes later. The vehicle matched the plate, and by the way, all the guns and everything associated with the robbery was found in the car. Then this guy was identified as the shooter, yet people are claiming they're innocent, even though their explanation is they just happened to see their friend from childhood walking on the streets alone. They picked him up, and they must have been mixed up with these two other black dudes. So you have a witness that sees them get into their car after the robbery. They're pulled over minutes later, and according to them, they're innocent because what must have happened was their third person that was not among the brothers, weird how both brothers are turning on the third person, did the robbery with two other black dudes. Then they got into a car the same color with the same plate number, last 4 digits, and then this guy jumped out of the car, and then they saw him all within minutes and got in the car with all the guns and weapons, and it was not suspicious to them at all, and then the cops pulled them over. It makes no sense. It's insane. If you believe this version of events, you're an idiot, but that is what John Fetterman believes, and he not only got these guys out of prison, but he hired them to work on the campaign. Again, the full explanation in the previous video will be linked in the iCard and in the description of this video.
So playing defense is never good. And Democrats tend to play defense, and I hate that. I would like to see more offense from them. And to be fair, Fetterman has been doing a great job. He does play offense, and that is very important. But if you look at the polling, it seems like this strategy is working a little bit for Dr. Oz. Let's go to graphic 5. The strategy appears to be paying off as the Republican candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania, Mehmet Oz, has gained some ground in the polls over the last 2 weeks. On Tuesday, the Cook Political Report, which in August shifted the race from toss-up to lead Democratic, moved it back to its toss-up column. I want to get your thoughts, Jordan, because honestly, I've been warning about this and I've been seeing it. I saw it from a mile away. I knew it was going to come to this. And my plea to Democrats was, don't try to outdo Republicans on being tough on crime. This is a great opportunity to empathize with victims of crime and offer something different and better. And I haven't really seen that. I've actually seen a lot of Democrats running away from this issue or trying to pretend like there isn't a crime wave at all.
So that's Anna Kasparian's setup. She said that this is something she's been worried about for a while. She saw this coming. She knows that this is a loser issue, but she doesn't want the Democrats to go tough on crime, and she doesn't want the Democrats to ignore the crime wave. Now they're going to throw it over to this new person, Jordan, who, for podcast listeners, is dressed like a Metro lumberjack or a hipster lumberjack. I'm not sure exactly how to describe this garb, but I'm trying to help you guys out there who are blind viewers listening to the podcast so you can get a picture in your mind of who's talking, because the voice doesn't give it away enough, even though it definitely does. But remember, Anna's issue, denying crime and running away from the issue. So I wonder what Jordan is going to do.
Well, Democrats like to govern from a position of fear, and I think that really infects their campaigns too, because a lot of people just bounce around between campaign and office or organization, whatever. And it's frustrating when you see moments like this when they were very clearly just picking outliers and trying to sensationalize them. Because it's reminiscent of that Willie Horton-style ad where they're just hyping these things up to scare people. But if you really look at it, and I did some research before I came here because I wanted to see where, especially in these states, what are the crime rates and how do they compare to other states? And would you be surprised if you heard that out of the top 10 states with the highest murder rates, 8 of them are red states?
So right here, the first thing that Jordan wants to do is deflect from the issue at hand, which of course is crime. Now, crime is a local issue. In fact, we know this because we have police departments that exist locally for the most part. District attorneys cover counties. Those are local positions. Mayors, which manage police departments, are also local officials. So this talking point of broadening out crime to a statewide issue when it's clearly a local issue in most cases, I will address the one exemption that we've been talking about a lot on this channel recently, is an absurdity onto itself. Because when you have a crap district attorney like Larry Krasner or many of the other left-wing prosecutors that exist across this country that don't want to prosecute anybody, and a crap mayor that doesn't manage the police department correctly, you cannot be surprised by these negative results. And wouldn't you know it, when you actually pull up the top 20 most violent cities per 10,000 residents, so this even includes small towns, 19 of the 20 are run by Democrats, and the one that's not run by a Democrat isn't run by a Republican, it's run by an independent. Claiming that these islands of blue criminality are the fault of the surrounding red state, which have nowhere near the same level of crime as these areas managed by Democrats, is absurd. And by the way, if you'll notice, this is a 2019 list. This is because we don't have the full statistics up until right now, but again, it's not going to be that different. And for those of you who are mad about my New Orleans video, where I talked about the impact of defunding the police on their department, I just want to point point out that in this year, they're actually 4th in homicide rate, and they jumped all the way to 1st in homicide rate. And before they froze the police budget, they were down around 7th. So yes, that does have an impact. It is a dramatic change, and it is notable. Now, in the state of New York, where we have absolutely the worst bail law ever, which guarantees automatic release across the state, that crime would be a state-level issue, and it needs to be addressed from the gubernatorial race, which is why I'm backing Zeldin in that race. Because even though we talk a lot about New York City's crime spike, there's actually crime increases in something like 98 of the 99 or 100 counties in the state of New York, because we can't hold anybody due to the fact that they have guaranteed automatic release, no bail at all whatsoever. So that would be an instance where the state basically makes it impossible, even if everything was going well, because the police, when they arrest somebody, have to automatically release them, most of the time same day, for serious violent charges and repeat offenders. So, for the most part, this is a local issue. If you look at crime and you rank them by cities, it turns out they're run by Democrats. The fact that these blue islands of criminality exist within red states is a distraction tactic, it's a denial tactic, it is meant to deceive you, and it's what we would expect from this hipster lumberjack.
Like, they're not really concerned about any of this. Yeah. If they were, they would be doing the same things about their own states.
1,000%. No, let me be clear about one thing, just in case anyone might misconstrue what I'm saying or thinking. No, Republicans don't care about the crime wave at all. But it is about how they campaign and how they message. And so when there is a crime wave and people are concerned about it, they're going to think that the candidate who pretends to care about it actually does care about it. You get what I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying, if they're going to attack Democrats on this issue, it's really important for the Democratic candidates to get out in front of it and say, listen, this is a problem. We recognize it. Here's what we're going to do about it.
And of course, Anna has to accuse the Republicans of not caring about the crime wave, of not being interested in crime, despite the fact that when Republicans are in power, crime tends to go down in comparison to Democrats. And despite the fact that Anna is clearly talking about this issue only in terms of its electoral implications, not in terms of the victims. She's giving strategy points rather than talking about policy points. And again, they're trying to deflect this to red states, even though they know for sure 19 out of 20 run by blue mayors, 19 out of 20 blue prosecutors. They are in control of all of these places and advocated for these terrible policies. She was warned that they would be terrible. She thought no big deal. And look at the results of the policies that she brought forward.
And they should offer up solutions that are very different from what we've done in the past and what we're currently doing today, right?
So Anna's like, they should offer solutions that are uniquely different from what we've done in the past and not what we're doing today. Anna, that's what they've been doing. They've been talking about how we have all these prosecutorial diversion programs. They've been talking about the issue of equity in criminal justice, because I don't know if you know this, it turns out this year, FBI statistics, quite racist. It turns out that they show that 60% of the murder suspects in the United States of America were black. And obviously, this is indicative of nothing but the racism of white people, because how can you explain the disparity between black people's population and their level of homicide? This is the governing philosophy, the new way of thinking put forward by the left in practice, and the consequences are what we always expected them to be. Heightened criminality, murders going up, all these terrible problems in the country, but throw it over to the hipster lumberjack so that he can deny it, so that I can disabuse him of that notion.
I mean, I don't even think it's this unique problem. Mm-hmm. We've had crime. We unfortunately will have crime. No one likes it. They try to frame Democrats as not only just being soft on crime, but wanting more of this. Mm-hmm. And these ads are just hysterical.
Democrats are soft of crime. And yes, every time a store gets ransacked, every time we see a mass looting, every time we see this destruction, it is downplayed, it is deflected. They're talking about how, oh, it's just property. And then they talk about policies about automatically releasing the criminals who do this. So the logical result of that is you do want more of it. You're okay with it. You tolerate it, because the thing that bothers you the most is the fact that the makeup of the criminals isn't what you would picture in your mind of what an equitable society would produce. You don't account for behavior, you don't really believe in cause and effect, and thus you try to deny reality, and you enforce that denial through the law, and we are suffering the consequences of it.
And I just think we unfortunately, and it's the nature of our politics, we can't really have a nuanced conversation about this issue.
No, we can't.
So unfortunately, it's sound bites, it's just 30-second ads, it's tweets. But ideally, I'd love to see him say, okay, lay out every single aspect of a reinvestment in our community, meet some people's material needs, meet some people's mental health needs, meet some people's health, just regular general health needs, all of these things together.
So here we have the basic denial deflection tactic when it comes to crime, which is you have to go arrest poverty, invest in people's material needs. Maybe if people weren't so poor, they wouldn't be killing so much, they wouldn't be raping so much, because I don't know if you guys know this, all rapists are definitely Aladdin. The reason why people rape is they look at their bank account, realize they have no money, and that's why they go out and commit rapes. Absurd, insane in every possible way. As we talked about multiple different times, crime is not caused by poverty. In fact, crime drives poverty. If you want to fight poverty, you have to fight crime.
And investment in education and preventative care, all of these things that really would help lower the crime rate. We can't do that.
And the idea that we need to just invest in education, which, by the way, it's not investing, it's spending money on education, as if that's not the highest line item in every state's budget already, is absurd. Baltimore spends $21,000 per pupil in their public school system. Baltimore is almost always in the top 3 of homicides each and every year in the United States of America. In fact, if you look at any of these major metropolitan areas that are experiencing crime increases, they're not due to the fact that they cut the education budget and all of a sudden people are like, I need to start shooting people in the streets. They spend a ton of money on the public school system. That money is being spent ineffectively. That is not a solution to crime. And in fact, one of the problems in our public school system is the fact that Biden, and this is a carryover from the Obama administration, was worried about racial disparities in suspension, so we let violent kids who commit violence in the classroom remain in the classroom because, again, disproportionate punishment, even though the behavior is wildly disproportionate, is viewed as a sign of racism. So you're wrong about everything, and notice how you're not talking about the issue. You're running away from it because you're too afraid to confront the issue.
Our system is so fundamentally broken, we cannot do that.
That's right.
No, Anna, that is not right. That is incorrect. It's about to get more incorrect, and this is one of the reasons why Republicans are winning on the crime issue, because you're in La La Land. You're talking about how criminals are Aladdin. We just need to invest money, aka spend government money, in these areas, and I'm sure it will be fine. The reason why people don't want to invest their money into these areas is because the crime is too high, is because you've decided that property rights aren't worth protecting. Why would I choose an area where people can loot with impunity when I can choose an area where that's not the case in order to invest? Why would I choose an area where shoplifting is out of control? It's an organized shoplifting ring. Why would I support that? Why would I be on board with that? The answer is I wouldn't. Thus, the crime is generating the poverty.
That's right.
So I don't really accept that we just have this unique crime wave that we have to address and deal with within the context of a campaign with Oz, or within the context of a campaign with Herschel Walker, because they're not reasonable, rational actors.
No, they're not. But you could use that to your advantage, right?
So now he's just refusing to accept that crime is on the rise. Now he's just refusing to accept that what we're seeing in the numbers proven out time and time again is actually happening. He's going full denial of crime. And this is the thing. He phrases it in a way to say, oh, it's not this unique crime wave or whatever. It's not some specific new thing and all that. It's just, we've had crime. We've always had it. It's no big deal. First of all, I already talked about how Philadelphia is a major issue in the Oz Fetterman campaign because Philadelphia has one of these left-wing district attorneys and they're seeing record number of homicides. Record, all time. Raw numbers, lower population, meaning record per capita as well. But it's actually worse nationwide than you think. See, there's a chart that was put out, and it looks like this. And a lot of lefties will point to this chart, and they'll talk about how, oh, look, over time, if you compare our crime rate to 30 years ago, our homicide rate, which is what's specifically here in this chart, it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. But I want you to look at this other chart. And by the way, this comes from my blog over at actualjusticewarrior.com/blog, where I wrote up about framing crime statistics. And I talk about how if you look at the year-over-year change, there's a couple of spikes in this chart, and the worst spike is post the George Floyd riots. It's about a 30% spike. But the next highest spike in homicide, according to this very same chart being put forward by the crime deniers in terms of year-over-year change, is from 2000 to 2001. Now, we all should know that in September 11th of 2001, 3,000 homicides were committed in downtown Manhattan in a single day. That is only a 20% increase year over year. the 2020 George Floyd riots? 30%. So even if you count the outlier number of homicides, and by the way, I am fully aware that 9/11 was not just about the homicides, it was about the terrorist attack and all that, but even if you count the dramatic spike from losing 3,000 Americans in one day, that is still 10% less of an increase than we saw year over year during the George Floyd riots. Just think about that. That outlier year that doesn't even belong on this chart due to the unique nature of September 11th of that year should be removed, and it's still not comparable to the level of homicide spike that we saw post George Floyd riots. But Jordan doesn't think that it's a unique spike in homicide. He doesn't think that something a little odd is going on over here because he wants to zoom out to the absolute worst part and not realize that we are hurtling toward that trajectory as we speak right now, and it's due to the fact that we've gone soft on crime. You can read my full thoughts about that on actualjusticewarrior.com/blog, and on top of that, guess what? You can become a member through my website at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
So, I mean, look, if I were running against someone like Oz, I'd be like, great, let's have a debate about the crime wave. Let's do it. I want to have a debate about the crime wave. I want to hear your solutions. What are your solutions? Because they have no solutions, right?
They have no solutions. Anna, you have no solutions. You have arrest poverty and all these other ridiculous, absurd anti-crime in name-only policies that were implemented before the first major crime wave in the United States of America, where we sympathize with the criminals and claim that they're Aladdin. And we actually have the actual solutions on our side. First and foremost, if we're talking about the state of New York, repeal raise the age. Repeal the automatic release guarantee in bail reform. Repeal less is more, which actually tells parole officers to not violate parole because they don't want to throw them back in prison. All of these repeat offenders that are getting out onto the streets and committing crime after crime, you need to throw them behind bars where they belong. They've already proven they are not sufficient to be in our society. And in terms of Pennsylvania, the Republican gubernatorial candidate needs to take a page out of Lee Zeldin's strategy and pledge right now that he is going to remove the district attorney, Krasner, who refuses to prosecute anybody in Philadelphia. These local governments serve at the leisure and with the consent of the state government. If your local government is raining terror on its citizens, you need to dissolve it and start all over again. Obviously, you cannot trust Krasner to do the right thing, so at the state level, you need to fix that. Now, for Oz's Senate race, what he should pledge to do is that in federal legislation, remove all this equity and diversity funding from federal policing bills. Try to go after and weaken the power of the federal government to enforce consent decrees on these local police departments, because clearly and obviously the effects, and this has been studied and proven time and time again, are increases in crime. And considering a bunch of these consent decrees are based on merely disparities, thus claimed by the left as racism, they're not doing anything to fight actual problems within the police departments themselves. On top of that, Oz can pledge that he will summon these woke left-wing district attorneys to Congress to ask them questions before the Judicial Committee, which he should say he's going to ask to be on, in order to figure out why they refuse to prosecute people. You need to put these people's feet to the fire, make these people famous, because these district attorneys are doing far more damage in their counties than anybody realizes. And by the way, what I said for the Pennsylvania governor's race, which comes from Lee Zeldin's promise in the New York governor's race, should apply to Republican governors across the country. If one of these woke Sean King-backed George Soros-funded district attorneys takes power and is driving up crime even in your left-wing cities, you have a moral obligation as a governor to remove them from office, because you cannot let this crime nonsense unleash itself upon our societies. Use your power as the governor and do it. I will go one step further than that and also recommend that they do what the governor of Michigan did in order to deal with financial woes in the state of Michigan, which is install emergency managers in place of the local government when crime is getting out of hand, and remove the mayors. You need to fix this problem. You can't allow your citizens to suffer, and you need to take extreme measures, because you can't count on a bunch of these local areas that are 9-1 Democrat to vote in the right people to deal with this criminality. Those are the ways that you would fix it. You enforce the law, you repeal these nonsense criminal justice laws that are meant to free criminals and benefit criminals, and at the federal level, you limit the Biden administration's ability to do damage in terms of our criminal justice system.
If we know that they're bad faith actors, if we know that they're not actually concerned about this issue, then create a situation in which you can call them out on it, call them out, and watch them stutter and struggle to answer a question about issues that they keep bringing up themselves.
Let us make it 100% clear that it is the left side that doesn't want to talk about this issue because they can't handle it.
Watch them stutter and struggle to answer a question about issues that they keep bringing up themselves, right? That's what I would like to see. And I do think, look, I think Fetterman, from what I've seen from him in relation to crime-related issues, right? No, he has the right idea.
So what's funny is that Anna Kasparian says watch them stutter as they try to explain their positions, and then Anna Kasparian tries to stutter explaining why John Fetterman is good on crime, even though, as I've shown you, John Fetterman wants murderers released on the street, and he actually employs 2 murderers that definitely did do. They're not innocent at all. If you believe that, you're a fool. And again, link in the description to my video where I prove beyond any doubt that they did in fact commit that crime.
He's like, our prisons are overflowing with people who shouldn't be there, people who are not being rehabilitated. If anything, they're turning into hardened criminals by the nature of being in these institutions. He wants to clean the records of people who have ever been prosecuted for marijuana possession, which makes all the sense in the world if you ask me. It's insane that in much of the country you could just legally buy weed, not even for medicinal reasons, just because you want to smoke weed. Right? And other parts of the country, you'll still go to prison for it. It's insane. So I think he has the right ideas. I think he's a smart guy.
Anna, what does that have to do with the crime wave going on in Philadelphia? I'm not sure if Pennsylvania has recreational marijuana, but I know for a fact that Krasner isn't prosecuting it. In fact, Krasner refuses to prosecute violent crimes. Remember they talked about carjackings earlier on in the video, how there have been 1,000 in the city of Philadelphia just this year? Well, I want to point to one specific carjacking that occurred in Philadelphia that should be getting national attention, because Krasner legitimately refused to prosecute this case due to the fact that the perpetrator was black and the victim was Asian. No, I'm not kidding. I will link this document in the description of this video. And to give you a breakdown of this case, what ended up happening was a young black man carjacked an Asian woman at gunpoint, and the woman went to the police. Now, she told them that her AirPods were actually in the vehicle, and she was able to open up a tracking app in order to find her AirPods. The police follow the AirPods tracking app, find the person that did the carjacking, they find the gun nearby, they find the vehicle, they make the arrest. Clear-cut, easy case. You got an identification, evidence that ties the perpetrator to the crime, matched the original description, anything and everything that you could possibly ask for, and Krasner releases a note on why he's dropping the charges, and including in that is the following. We do not have sufficient corroboration of the complainant's identification of the handcuffed defendant. Clothing descriptor of all black lacks enough specificity to be corroborative. I pulled the defendant's arrest photo and there is nothing unique about his appearance. Also, it's worth mentioning that this is a cross-racial ID. Black defendant, Asian complainant. That will attract additional scrutiny in court. We cannot at this time attribute the firearm to the defendant. It was recovered 8 feet from him, and there were no observations, and it's cut off. So yeah, let's go over that again. They track this guy with the AirPods, find him with the car. They find him with the other person involved in the carjacking. The victim described what he was wearing. He's wearing the exact same thing. The victim ID'd his face. They also have the gun 8 feet away from him where he was with the car, and Krasner says he's not going to prosecute it because cross-racial identification, perpetrator black, victim Asian, therefore that's going to bring some unwanted scrutiny at trial. So Krasner, who by the way is completely aligned with John Fetterman, needs to go. And you tell me, Anna, how these two candidates that are this soft on crime actually secretly have the right idea, because marijuana possession or something or whatever, expunging records or who cares.
Don't meet him where he's at.
Yep.
You have the upper hand. The polling show he's still up by 4%. Mm-hmm. It's not, the most comfortable position to be in. Things can change, but he's still up, and it's because he has a good platform.
Yep.
Oz doesn't have a platform. It just he wants to privatize Medicare Advantage and universalize private Medicare Advantage.
Insane.
In what world does that make sense? That's such an easy debate to win.
Oh my God. No one wants that. No. Republican.
Dr. Oz is within the margin of error in a lot of polls. He's clearly gaining ground. He has the momentum. And again, Fetterman has to run away from this issue. He has to run away from his past statements because all of his past statements are terrible. He is in power. He's enforcing this let the criminals go policy at the lieutenant governor position, and that is making crime worse. So yeah, Fetterman has to run away from John Fetterman if he has any hope, and hope that people don't notice who he actually is and what he stands for, and his record as mayor of that small town and the level of crime that went on there.
Voters don't want that.
Yeah, well, Wall Street wants it.
Exactly. So have him repeat that he wants that, that he's pushing for that. I mean, anyway, but you're right. Fetterman has been doing great. I think his campaign, for the most part, has been pretty wonderful. And he might be the only Democrat running for office who understands meme culture, which is great. It's rare.
His digital team is fantastic.
Yeah.
They've been crushing it.
They've been so good.
You know what I love about this video is that the Young Turks are so obsessed with coming out strong, they don't realize that they expose their own weakness time and time again. Here you have Anna and Jordan saying he doesn't have to run from this, he doesn't have to be afraid, they should confront him on the issue, fight back, because Oz would have no stance and no policies in order to solve the issue. And what do? They deflect to any other issue in order to avoid this topic because they can't talk about it, because they know Fetterman is dead to rights. And I can't wait for Dr. Oz to win this Senate seat and the Young Turks to talk about how it wasn't fair because money in politics, and this doesn't count as a real progressive losing, even though Fetterman is a progressive leftist and he's about to blow this race, which at one point was a double-digit lead for him. It's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed that you nominated this guy, and the left wing should be embarrassed about the rot that they've allowed to fester in this country in terms of crime since they took power. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about TYT, failing on crime, trying to simp for Fetterman. Till next time.